Hi guys.
Hey, how are you?
Good. It's good to see you. How are you doing?
Yes, good to see you.
How's everything?
Glad you could join.
Yeah, thanks for I'm glad you guys did this on Zoom. This is very convenient.
Absolutely.
Yes, good. And just in case y'all haven't noticed, we are live streaming our meeting. So it is streaming onto our YouTube channel right now. We have a couple of others that will potentially join us. But just for time's sake, I know one was going to join in as soon as she got off of a work phone call. But Nathan, just to keep in with time, don't want to wait too long, so you just let me know.
You go right on ahead. I think with us streaming, we're kind of got our bases covered.
That sounds good. Wonderful. All right, let me get my notes. Well, Happy New Year to start. I feel like I know it's almost the end of January, but
super weird.
I know January's flying by. But yeah, so with our board meeting this month, being in Richmond, we just really wanted to try to get the committee together. But obviously trying to work that out in Richmond's a little difficult. So being able to meet via Zoom, like you said, it's nice, convenient. We can still touch base on things that need to be talked about and just catch up on things via Zoom. And so that y'all aren't just watching me talk, I do have some slides that I'm going to share. And before I do that, I had attached the agenda. And I'm just going to kind of walk through that. The slides will kind of coincide with our agenda. But just like I said, so that you're not just staring at me talking the whole time, I'm going to bring up a slide to show. So let me share my screen real quick. All right. So hopefully everybody can see the blue screen now with our committee. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, looks good.
Awesome. So this is just kind of a breakdown of our agenda, things that I wanted to highlight for the quarter. And so for this quarter, the first thing is just looking at our numbers. And so on the agenda, the second page of the agenda, I have the breakdown of our numbers. So that would be the October through December of 2022. Now on the screen, I also have a comparison of the two previous years, just so that we can kind of see pre-pandemic numbers for the quarter, and then of course last year's. And so we are jumping in October, November, December, of course, kind of running with outreach programming at the museum. And of course, you see with distance learning, that has really dropped off, because pretty much our groups that we work with are just really wanting that in-person experience. So the way I have it broken down, outreach, and that includes not only the Martinsville, our numbers here at the Martinsville site, but that's also our educators that are in the Charlottesville area and Eastern Shore. So I kind of consolidate those numbers. The Martinsville site is definitely a higher number versus the Charlottesville and Eastern Shore. And then at the museum are all of those programs here, also including our festivals. So like if you notice that October of 2022, it was over 2,000 people. That number includes one of our events that we had called our Bones and Booze, which was actually our first year running this event. And so education department had several activities for that event. So those numbers are a little bit higher for October than say November. December of 2022 is also a little bit higher because we had another event, Night at the Museum with Santa. And we had some education crafts with that one. So the numbers are looking really good. We're on track. We're still not back to our pre-pandemic numbers, but getting there. But I wanted to have the comparison for everyone. And so we're looking at, for the quarter for October through December, we had a little over 200 programs presented and a little over 6,000 people served. So any questions about our quarterly numbers?
No questions, Christy. It's just really encouraging to see that they're getting back to, and in some cases beyond, where we were prior to the pandemic. It's probably an indication that people are hungry for these types of events.
Yes.
That the museum numbers are maybe a little bit down. It doesn't mean people aren't still a little skittish about going out, especially with all the other things that are catching these days. So, but the numbers look great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, it's, you know, we're getting back to the in-person festivals and having other, you know, events. And you can see, like I pointed out, with the distance learning, we are still offering those. We still have those available. You know, so if someone does inquire about them, we will definitely do those. But we have seen, given the option, everyone is really wanting the in-person in the classroom or visiting the museum hands-on approach. But
Sure.
That's great. Yeah, Christy, you just answered my question. So that's perfect. It's great to see, like, just to follow what Nathan said, it's great to see that so many people are engaging with in-person programs still. That's awesome.
yes, awesome. Well, great. Well, I will kind of scoot on through, but please let me know if y'all have any questions or anything as we're going through. I did have, so this is for July of 2021 through June of 2022. Just wanted to kind of show a graphic of, this one is our total number served with various programmings just through education. This is just through the education department. And so we're looking at those numbers served for the at the museum programs, the outreach, distance learning, all of those for the July 21 through June 22. So you can really see those at the museum spikes with festivals. And then our programming, you can really see the spikes with our outreach program. And so these are just the total numbers of programs presented.
That's great.
And I really like to do this so that we can have that visual, and so we'll continue doing this kind of graphic so that we can kind of see any trends and things. I mentioned with our at the museum programs for the quarter, for October, we held the first ever Bones and Booze. And so this was an event that was held mainly outside. We had the big circus tent, as you can see in the image on the left. We had various activities and crafts with the education department. Curators had tables set up with various bones and things to share with the public. We had community partners set up, and they had various activities for everyone to take part in. And then we also had some bands that played. We had some other I guess, demonstrations. We had like a magician, we had stilt walkers. So we had this really really fun event, Bones and Booze, in October. And so it was successful. And so we are planning that one again for October this year. And then the other images I mentioned for December, we held this was also a first annual event. It was Night at the Museum with Santa. And so we had Santa and an elf here for kids to see, but we, the education department, had some crafts and activities for the kids to do. So they made snowflakes, which you can see with the lower image just out of the coffee filters, and did a little bit of a chromatography activity with them, so that they used the markers and sprayed it with water and kind of could see the display that the colors would make, and then kind of dried off, and then they get to take it home with them. So that was a really fun event. But depending on what activities, we try to have something fun for the kids to do and take home, but also some of that science behind it as well. So for this fun event, we talked about the snowflakes, and we talked about the crystal shapes with the kids as they were coloring and creating. So that was a lot of fun. With our outreach programs for the quarter, Charlottesville, our educators in Charlottesville had several programs with the school districts in Charlottesville. So very hands-on with animal furs, skulls, things of that nature. And so it's great to get the images from our Charlottesville educators so that I can share with you the programs that they're conducting in their areas also. So that is Bruce in the image, the bottom image, Bruce Gatling Austin. He is one of the outreach educators in Charlottesville. Oh, and there's some bones. And then with our programming here, I just wanted to highlight a couple of our programs that we take into the schools. So one of them being a program around soil science. And so the children are able to use these soil sieves, and they're looking at soil layers as well as soil particle size. And so they have a lot of fun because they have, going into it, they've heard of soil layers, and, soil can be made of different things, but using these sieves, they're able to see the actual soil particle size and how they just make up the components of the soil, and how some of them are microscopic. And so we also bring in like hand lenses so that they can look at those really small particles. So it's a lot of fun, quite messy, but that goes hand in hand. And then our other image that I wanted to highlight, the kids had a great time with this one. This one's called The Nature of Matter. And so we have this program geared for multiple grade levels, and we just look at their science standards of learning as to what exactly they're covering with matter at that point. So it might be that we're focusing on solid, liquid, gas. It might be that we're doing some activities on atoms, elements, compounds, things like that. But they're all very hands-on. This one, they were actually doing a little bit of math also. They were doing some measuring, measuring the mass. So incorporating not only the science, incorporating some math also. And the teachers were very excited about that, with the weights, with the different amounts for them to kind of add together. So a lot of fun. We try to pack in as many hands-on things with them as we can. We continue our partnership not only with our local schools, but we have our after school programs. And so during this the quarter, October through December, we had a lot of programs with our Martinsville Henry County After 3 program, which is called MHC After 3. And so these are programs with the middle school and high school students. And so there's about 5 sites total, middle and high school, that we work with the number of programming for each site. So it's usually about 5 programs per site. And so the programs, instead of just being a one and done program, the programs are theme involved and can really get into multiple layers of that theme. So it could be engineering, forensics, things like that. But being able to work with the kids several days in a row really allows to kind of build on that information and really make a meaningful program. And we work in museum visits. So in the one image, you can see they came over to visit the museum. They always love doing that. They ask to, come back. And then the other image is actually an engineering challenge week of programming. And so they had different engineering challenges that they had to work together on. And so this was at, let me go back. This one was at Martinsville High School, the image on the right. So our local city high school. And so the students were given some parameters of their engineering challenge, and they really had to think about how to solve the problem, so to say, and work together. And of course, with the high school, it then becomes a competition with everyone. And so it was really funny because they were trying to see who could come up with the solution the quickest. And so, yeah, it was a lot of fun to see the high schoolers still really getting into it and not being too cool to participate in something. But right now I'm working with the site leaders for our spring programming for the MHC After 3. So these were from the fall. And so the spring, we will have a completely new suite of programming for them because, working with the same students, some of them, through several years of that program, we really want to make sure that we are presenting new material so that the students are like, the museum's here, we did that the last time. So we really want to make sure that it's fresh and new. And we actually kind of survey the students on things that they would be interested in participating in. And of course, given the parameters of what we can work with here at the museum. But so we work with them to get their input on the programming too, so that they're vested in the program more. And so great groups to work with. Just some other ongoing programs. So those were kind of specific to the quarter, but our public programs that we offer, more than just that, we have our homeschool science and engineering academy. We offer those twice a month during the school year. And so right now they are a registration-based, fee-based program. And our programs have filled up very quickly. We work with 3 age groups simultaneous. So we have 3 classrooms here on site. And so the 3 of us are working with the different age groups simultaneous. So that way, if the family members have, multiple age children, they're all participating at the same time. And so we also have our toddler programs that's ongoing September through May for our 3 to 5 year olds with a caregiver, whether it's, parent, grandparent, or adult. And our toddler program is something that we have started mirroring with daycares. We have a church next door to us that has a daycare early learning center. And so they come over once a month to repeat those programs. And we're working with a couple of other daycares with that similar monthly program concept. On the agenda, I had some upcoming projects that I just wanted to mention that we're really excited about. We have been working with JMU, with specifically their Center for the Advancement of Sustainable Energy, or CASE, on something called KidWind. And if you're not familiar with this project, they have a great website with lots of information. It is a statewide program in which students work at their schools to create wind turbines. And they create these wind turbines to test the energy output of their turbine. And so they'll work on them at their school and then have competitions. And so we're very excited to have a competition here at the museum in March. So I'm working with Remy with JMU to get all of those details straight for our competition in March, and then the winners from that competition will then go on to the higher state level competition that will be in Virginia Beach before the end of the school year. And so in the images you can see we have this large wind tunnel. And so it's basically 4 fans that are kind of stacked on top of each other. And there's a plastic wind tunnel that they set their wind turbines in. So that is kind of the testing area. And so they're able to hook their wind turbine up. You can kind of see the laptop running the programming. So they're actually able to see the energy output of their wind turbine as it's moving. They're able to make modifications to their wind turbine to hopefully increase the energy output. And so this has been a lot of fun working with them on this. And so we're really looking forward to that in March. And then seeing how the students advance to the statewide competition. Something else that we have been talking about for a while was a grant through the IMLS, and I worked with a couple of our curators. I worked with Dr. Nancy Moncrief and Dr. Cal Ivanoff on this grant. We called it Scope It Out, and it was to acquire 15 student stereo microscopes to have here at the museum to set up basically a microscope lab. And so we finally have everything set up. December, we finally got everything in place, got the scope set up, and then started with programming immediately. And so we're working with everything from our homeschool groups to our public school groups. So private and public are able to use this space. And not only the students, we're offering it obviously for scientists, student interns, even master naturalists, so a volunteer organization. So this lab space is really set up to be intentional, multi-purpose. And so the images right now are from our students using them, and they have just had a great time. And part of the grant, what I'm doing is capturing information to report back for our grant of how many of the students, as they come in, what kind of prior knowledge did they have about scopes? Have they used microscopes before? How familiar are they with them? And then going through those, just everything from basics of how to use the microscope, what are the parts of the microscope, all of those little details. And then with subsequent programming, really getting into more of the programmatic part at that point of, okay, now you have the basics, now let's jump into more programming stuff. And so I'm also working with the curators on types of programs that we can do utilizing some of their research. So for example, with Dr. Moncrief, working with mammal skulls and molar tooth wear on various rodents. And so these scopes are really going to open up a whole new suite of programming for us, and not just programming with the education department, but also with our curators. And like I mentioned, with visiting scientific staff, students, student interns, and volunteers. But we just got this set up in December, so really excited to see this up and going, and working with public schools now to get in some of our science coordinators so that they can see the space and really work on what grade levels could we have coming over to utilize the space. On the agenda, I put a few of our grants. I always like to keep everybody up to date on our grants. I work with Ryan Barber here at the museum to acquire grants for several different avenues. Because our programming are fee-based for our schools, we work together on grants for scholarships so that teachers can apply to cover the program costs of us coming into their classroom to conduct programming, or them coming here to the museum for a visit. And the scholarship can cover not only the admission, but also programming while they're here. So we have that avenue of scholarships for programming, but then we also have a grant, the Siemens Empower grant. And so this was something that I worked on when we were installing the solar panels on the museum roof. And so we were able to receive $7,000 towards purchasing new material and to upgrade existing program material, focusing on renewable resources. So that's been great. We've been able to order some kits and things to create new programming, but also supplement and kind of update some material that's just kind of gotten, worn over the years. But great. Let's see. So right now we still have our we have 2 scholarship opportunities, and like I mentioned earlier with our programming, even though we do not have any distance learning right now, that is still an option, and the scholarships also apply for virtual programming too. So no matter what style they would like, in person, virtual, or outreach, the scholarships would cover. I wanted to briefly update everyone on the exhibits because we're actually going through some exhibit changes right now. So the Science of Flight in our temporary exhibit room has closed. It closed this weekend to the public. So right now it's being deinstalled. And so the next exhibit is actually one that we are acquiring from the American Museum of Natural History. It's called Dino Discoveries, Ancient Fossils, New Ideas. And so that will open in February. and actually run until January of 2024. So I do believe it opens February 11th, and then we'll run an entire year. And then when that exhibit closes, we have our next one lined up for that temporary exhibit space already. It's going to be on bats. And so this one's really interesting. It's through an exhibit company called Evergreen Exhibitions, but it's called Masters of the Night, the true story of bats. So we have our temporary exhibits lined up for the next few years. So exciting to see those. Can't wait to see the dino exhibit when it opens up. But very cool. So just wanted to do a few little updates with that. But I definitely want to have some time for everybody. If there's any questions or any comments or things like that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. But if there's any, questions, comments, things like that.
Just like every time we meet, Christy, it seems like you guys have stayed pretty busy.
We are definitely keeping busy, which is a lot of fun, with just the variety of programming and just the our continued program support with the schools, but also these new avenues, opening up some programs, with the microscopes, being able to bring some new program offerings, the KidWind project. So really looking forward to some of the upcoming things.
Yeah, this all is super exciting, and I love seeing the Booze and Brews and the Santa programs. Those are very cool. And then just like I feel like I always I always say this because I've got a history background, but if you guys ever want to start exploring, as if you don't, if you have the capacity, you guys are already doing so much, and if you ever want to explore some cross-curricular like science history stuff, just let me know and I'm happy to like help out with any of that.
That would be awesome. We have a couple of history related programming, social science. One really popular is with Native Americans, but then we also have one that we have a lot of requests for the Virginia Social Studies SOL that revolves around Greece and Rome, and Egypt, China. And so love to pick your brain on some things that we can do.
Well, I don't want to give you more work either, because you guys are already doing a lot. So just know that the option's there.
Yes. No, that sounds great. That sounds great, because we definitely can cover that material, but want to do it well. So yes, that's great.
Okay. Christy, it's Mukunda. Awesome
Hey.
job as usual, as far as telling us everything that you've done with the programming. So what I was thinking about is wondering if we do much work with the Piedmont Governor's School, since those are the advanced kids, and they're getting associate's degrees while they're still in high school, and it seemed like there'd be either some internship opportunities, some because they have to do some big projects also, but it just seemed like there'd be that might be some other place to do a little outreach also.
Yes, definitely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because we've actually had some communication just recently trying to work out some programming. So yes, and so it did kind of fall off with COVID. But yes, so starting to work on that programming again. And so working with them on, what that is going to look like, just so we don't have a lot of details yet, but that is something that literally just came up recently. So yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. Hopefully we can get that going soon. And I think as the year builds on, which it's already going so quickly, there's a lot of inquiries coming in. And so groups that we had worked with previously, pre-COVID, working on projects, kind of like I mentioned with the Piedmont Governor School, starting to get those inquiries back again and looking at those partnerships again, and what we can do. But yeah, that's great. Thank you for mentioning that, Mukunda.
Oh, no problem. I just remember when my son was doing it, that they had a couple of large projects, and he wanted to do something on the bioluminescence working at the museum, but something didn't work out. But that's what made me think about it.
Yes. Oh, but no, that's great. Any other questions, comments, anything? Awesome. And I know Nathan said he had to step away. But I always like to talk with the group about for things that we would like to report on at the full board meeting from our committee. So is there anything that you would like to see, Nathan? And of course, I'll make sure Nathan, I fill Nathan in on this, but is there anything that you would like for him to report out on from things that we covered with our meeting today?
Maybe some kind of mention of the numbers. I'm really amazed at how many people are still really engaging with in-person, even with like surge of COVID and RSV, and like it's you guys are just doing a lot of programs and outreach. It's really an awesome thing to see.
And of course, we're still very cautious. And we follow any kind of protocols that the schools have in place, and just trying to be cautious with staff. No one wants to spread any sickness. But that sounds good. Awesome. Anything else you would like me to relay to Nathan to make sure that he brings up for the committee report? Great. Well, those were just kind of our highlights for the quarter. Please let me know if I can provide any information, anything else for you, any questions and things like that. But I appreciate everyone taking time to meet today. I know everybody's schedule is super busy, so I greatly appreciate everybody taking some time to just touch base. And not sure if any of you are able to make it to the Richmond meeting. Awesome. I will see you next week. Well, thank you all for connecting, but I think that's all that I had to cover, unless anyone else has anything. We will adjourn our meeting.
Thank you so much, Christy.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you. I thank you. Y'all have a great